All right, I'll call our Wednesday, December 18th Board of Health meeting to order, being that it's 4 o'clock. Could I have an approval for the agenda today?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Could I have an approval of the minutes from our November 20th meeting?
There are no additions or corrections. I move they be approved as submitted.
And I'll second.
Thank you. All right. Board of Health, review of the accounts payable report.
We have to vote on the,
What's that?
we have to
You have to
vote.
vote on the
on
minutes.
Oh, sorry.
The minutes.
All right. Since we had
Have a motion.
a motion to approve the minutes and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any not in favor? Okay. All right, we're on to review of the accounts payable report.
Good afternoon. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have some.
All right.
Okay, on the first page, under Will Fierro,
Mhm.
the MDARD food training was 104.07.
Correct.
And then if you go to page 3, MDARD food training for Sierra was 467.36.
Yeah, so Will's is food and travel. Sierra's, there was a mix up with the card for the room, and her room charge was put on her personal card. So she was reimbursed for her meals and the room charge itself
Okay.
to have to stay for the training.
Okay. That's all that I had on the accounts payable.
I have none.
Any other questions? Hearing none, could we have a motion to accept the accounts payable report?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, we're on to health officers report.
Good afternoon. January is National Radon Awareness Month, so we'll be again offering free radon kits at the health department. Residents can stop by during regular hours to pick up that kit. The statewide septic code passed in the Senate, well, number 299. Casey will be expanding on that when she presents. Respiratory illness is at a moderate level, and COVID, influenza, and RSV are all increasing. As of today, we have 29 confirmed cases of pertussis. That seems to be leveling out a little bit. It is a mix of vaccinated and unvaccinated. For the state of Michigan, to date, there has been 1,675 confirmed cases of pertussis, which actually surpasses year-end totals from 2004 to 2023. I actually ran some numbers for emergency department visits and urgent care visits for anybody that went there for pneumonia symptoms. And in the last week, there was 60 residents that sought treatment. The greatest risk was for those over 30. There was a few adolescents, but the majority of them were over 30, and actually 11 were over 60 years old. Again, we have avian influenza in Ottawa County. It was detected in a commercial poultry facility. And then also there was an issue from CDC this afternoon regarding a positive Louisiana person that contracted H5N1 or avian influenza. There's more to come on that as well. I would be happy to answer any questions.
We don't have any existing business.
We do not.
Okay, so we'll go on to new business. We have John Tuckerman up for re-upping for his Board of Health member term.
Yes, his term ends on the end of this month, and that was on the agenda to reappoint him for another 3 years.
I'll make a motion to reappoint him.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. He wins.
Good job.
His message to me was, I move to nominate Dr. Lori for chair. And you're not getting off that easy. All right, let's go on to our program reports, personal health.
Hello. So we are still running our respiratory clinics for flu, COVID, RSV and pneumonia every Monday all day and Friday mornings. And we are doing our pop-up clinics. We try to do about one a month. We just had one at the Adrian District Library. And we saw 4 people on this last one. So they are kind of catching on. Yep, gaining steam. So that's a good thing. So the goal is to try to get one a month in. So that's what we're working for. Any questions?
All right, we'll move on to environmental health.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Just a couple updates. I'm going to start with just a real quick on avian influenza. I know Monica touched on it. Just wanted to briefly mention that the USDA put out a mandate that's going to require raw milk to be tested. Because that's one of the largest concerns is that raw milk is not pasteurized and therefore there's the potential for it to spread from raw milk to people if they consume it. So that was put into place at the beginning of the month. And then actually, just as we started our meeting today, I just saw there was a news alert that the state of California has declared a state of emergency due to bird flu cases in dairy cattle there. So it's definitely still out there. It's circulating. It's a concern, but obviously lots of eyes on it. So we'll continue to keep you up to date as we hear more. Before I go into the statewide septic code, I wanted to give you an update on the wastewater monitoring. We had our meeting actually today with our U of M partners. And we are starting to see kind of all across the board rises in detections of rotavirus, RSV, norovirus, and potentially influenza A, but we're still a little early in that. None of that is really a surprise, all very seasonal, but they are starting to see it tick up. In particular, they're seeing an increase in the Midwestern states in RSV. Michigan seems to be lagging a little behind, but we won't be surprised if that catches up eventually. So, statewide septic code. So as you probably know, we are in lame duck as of right now, and the state legislators have just a few days left to get bills passed if they're going to get them passed this session. There are 2 bills that are currently trying to get passed. One is a House bill, one is a Senate bill. As Monica mentioned, Senate Bill 299 has been passed by the Senate. It was passed last week, was received by the House, and when I left my office today, the House had still not taken it up. So I'm not sure what's happening with that one. The House bill got through committee last week and was on the schedule to go through the House today. I assume that will pass and then it will get sent to the Senate. I have no idea what will happen to it once it gets there. We didn't receive any updates from our legislative liaison today. So everything's kind of up in the air. It's kind of a mess in Lansing is the general take that I'm getting. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Essentially, the bills are very similar. There are a couple differences in them, and they can't pass both just because they are different. So at some point, they're going to have to come together and agree or just not pass either. That's also an option. So, but in general, they're both looking to institute a statewide construction criteria to implement certain registration requirements for what we consider like proprietary technologies. So systems that actually do more advanced treatment on site. They want to establish a statewide database. Those are all things we're really behind. Where they kind of differ is in the routine inspection schedule. In general, they're looking at systems. The first systems to be inspected would be those that are 20 years old and are within certain isolation distances. So in particular, if they're within 500 feet of surface water. Here in Lenawee County, we have a lot of lakes, a lot of surface water. As you can imagine, that's going to be a lot of systems. Or 20 years old and we have no record. So on the opposite end, a lot of our older farm homes, we don't have record of anything out there. So for us, it would be looking at a lot of inspections, and they have different timelines from we'd have to get those done, like 5 years versus 10 years. But in general, they kind of agree on that. And then overall looking for, after we get initial inspections done, systems being inspected every 10 years. So we will keep an eye on those and see. They also have a lot of other stuff in them, but that's kind of the general, the biggest part that people are looking at are those routine inspections and what the criteria is going to be and all of that. So we will continue to monitor it. If they're going to pass either of them, it has to be, my understanding is basically by the beginning of next week. If they don't get passed, they're not going to be put through and they'll die because the legislative session will end. So we'll continue to keep you updated if anything passes. So stay tuned. And I think that's all I had for today.
Just an update, we have a meeting with the state veterinarian tonight on
Oh.
Zoom at 6:30 about avian influenza
good.
and screwworm, which I guess is rising in the southern states.
Hmm.
They're starting to pick that up, so a couple more beauties to keep an eye out for.
There's always something.
There is.
Madam Chairman. You talked about the testing has to be done if they're over 20 years in proximity to groundwater or there are no records.
Yep, so it is.
I may sound a little naive, but how do you find them if there are no records?
Right, that's a good question. So there's truly with each of these bills, there's a second bill that's tied to them that talks about establishing the Technical Advisory Committee, the TAC. They are going to make the rules. These bills have certain specifics, but in general, like the construction code and things like that are going to be completely left up to the TAC and Eagle to figure out over, it's supposed to be set for 3 years. So if one of these passes, they have 3 years to set rules. So I'm hoping some of those things would be answered by that, but right, it's unfortunate. We'd like to know that on the front end before it becomes a law. My assumption would be you'd go by when the house was built. So if a home was built 80 years ago and we don't have record of it, it would qualify for an inspection. Either way, we're looking at a lot of inspections. The our statewide partners currently are more in favor of the Senate bill because it gives us 10 years after they promulgate rules. So we're looking at truly 13 years to do that first round of inspections. The House bill only gives us 5 years after they promulgate rules. So there's also one of the big sticking points is there's not really funding established in the bills. So I think the expectation is they'll have a lot of third-party inspectors that will do the inspections, but our department's required to review every inspection that comes in. So even if we're not boots on the ground doing the inspections, we have to dedicate time to review them. And if, say, an inspection does come in and they say we think this system is considered failed based on the definition, we then do have to go out. So you're looking at homeowners having to pay for the initial inspections and then potentially paying for us to then turn around and come out just to confirm what has been determined by a third-party inspector. There's just a lot of things. Like I said, there's some things we can get behind as far as, like a statewide database would be great. Having a committee to discuss different types of systems and maybe better treatment technologies and things, wonderful. But we all, I would think I can say pretty confidently, collectively across the state and the health departments have a lot of concerns about the lack of funding and the financial impact this is going to have on homeowners who, as of right now, have no requirements for any inspections other than maybe what some local ordinances have required across the state.
All right, any other questions for environmental health? All right, we'll move on to emergency preparedness.
Good afternoon, everyone. So a little bit of a lengthy one from us as well. So with the emergency preparedness, the EPCs for Region 1, we kind of are covering a bunch of different things, deliverables that are due. One that came up was due January 10th. We've submitted ours for our region already, or our jurisdiction, is the jurisdictional risk assessment. So we talked about in the previous Board of Health meeting was the community risk assessment, kind of looking at the populations and what is our at-risk groups and minority groups. On building on that, we now had to identify the top 5 hazards or risks that could affect those groups or affect our community in general. So working with our local emergency management and our hospital disaster planner, we kind of came up, for the public health side of things, it's kind of weird how we kind of fall into this, but from the public health side of things, the top 5 risks that were identified is obviously a communications disruption is our #1 risk. Most of our emergency communications is all digital now, from 911 and the sheriff's department, it's all digital. So a cyber attack that could disrupt that would completely disrupt pretty much all emergency operations. We just had at the health department this past week where we had no phones, and that was not fun. So that across the board is in all from emergency management, us as public health, and in the hospital is our #1 risk, is if we lose ability to communicate, it all kind of just falls apart. Our second known risk that we're looking at is infectious disease. We just went through COVID. That's not a surprise. It's a big risk for us. It affected 27% of the population in Lenawee. So that's obviously our #2 risk, followed by supply chain failures. We just went through the saline shortage. Thankfully, it didn't affect us too much because we do have a larger health system that can, handle the weight of that, but smaller health systems struggled. But supply chain failure from medications to food, that can be difficult. We are more rural in the essence of supply chain. Fourth was disaster. Flooding mainly is our biggest one. Yeah, we have winter storms, but we're used to dealing with the winter. It's not a huge deal for us, but our rural areas can suffer lots of flooding, takes out roads. We have no way to get to those areas. And then finally, our 5th risk that they asked for us identified as workplace violence. We unfortunately just had that event with ProMedic at a doctor's office. That was horrific. And it can be, employee to employee, customer, or whatever to the business. So that's our 5th risk for our jurisdictional risk assessment. Moving on, we did the COOP training for the general staff. We are doing an administrative tabletop on the COOP plan that was updated January 13th. So we'll test that out and see how that goes and make additions and changes if we need to. Touching back on the saline shortage, as of right now, it's pretty good. No issues concerned. I talked to Jessica. There's no worries there from the hospital side of things, and I haven't heard anything from the EMS world as well. And Baxter's production is getting back up to speed, so I don't foresee there being an issue going forward. Casey touched on HPAI. We've been talking about it with the EPCs as well. There is 55 known human cases of HPAI in the US. 6 of those are in Michigan as of November the 25th. The 2 that we talked about the most in our meeting was the 2 unknowns. There's 2 people that have got it and they have no known contact to dairy or poultry or any reason they would have contracted the disease. That is concerning to the EPC world. And I remember when Epi was talking about it because there is that pig in Oregon that got the disease. We all know pigs are the perfect vector to make it human to human contact. That is not what happened with those 2 unknown. We don't know that, but it raises the alarm that, is this becoming human to human? As of right now, we do not know. And she brought up that there was the HPI in the Ottawa County poultry and the testing. The next big topic from the EPCs at a public health level is the federal level is wanting to push to do a family assistance center, an FAC, or family reunification center. So this is set up in the event of a mass casualty or a large event for families can reach out and figure out where their loved one is if they were involved in the event. For us, our biggest events that could happen would be the, MIS and faster horses, where we could have a large scale, mass casualty kind of event. The question from all the EPCs is most health departments don't really know where we would fall in that role because emergency managers and hospitals kind of do their own thing and they have their own plans. But as a public health realm, we really don't have what we would want us to do. Most health departments, including ours, do not have the staffing volume to set up an FAC or a reunification center that takes hundreds of staff and a lot of resources. So we're kind of all asking as a state level, like, what do you want us to do? Because per our understanding in the public health code, the state would set up an FAC. But the state is asking us as EPCs, we'll create a plan for an FAC. And we're like, okay. So there's more discussion on that. We're pushing back at the state, like, I don't know how you want us to do this. Like, none of us have the staffing nor the funding to do such a thing. And then our medical directors for Region 1 are looking at our open pod dispensing forms. It's been a hot topic for as far as I can see in our records that Susie's had, and all the EPCs are kind of echoing the same thing. These questions that we'd ask if we have to do a mass dispensing of antibiotics are difficult, to say the least, for a layperson to understand. Like they ask, do you have allergies to quinolones? Most nurses don't even know what a quinolone is off the top of their head, let alone asking, a random person, do you have allergies to what a quinolone is? So the Region 1 medical directors are sitting down and looking at this and seeing if they can simplify these forms, take out unnecessary questions and make it more streamlined. And then once we get that back, as the EPCs in Region 1, we're going to try to look at those and see if we can, maybe do an open pod, large scale event testing for us. But it's kind of where we're at with that. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. We're on to finance.
Well, I'll keep mine very short. It's the end of our first quarter at the end of this month. So there's that for you. Sorry. Going after Justin, I feel very, very lacking on that. I've also included in your packet the final financial statement for our last fiscal year. We did very well in maintaining our budget and being able to not have to use local dollars. So do you have any questions on that? I know it's a large report.
All right. Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Merry Christmas, everyone, and Happy New Year.